Interment will be at Mount Hope Cemetery. The family will be receiving friends for Shiva today, Friday, from 2 to 6, and tomorrow, Shabbat, after Shabbat, from 7 to 9 p.m. at 140 Superior Road here in Rochester, zip code 14625. If you further wish to honor the memory of Irving S. Gordon, you may do so by making contributions to the Temple Bethel, the JCC, or to the Veterans Medical Center. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai rohi lo echsar, benodeh sheyarbitzeni, al mei minuchot yenahaleini. נפשי ישובב ינכני במג צדק למען שמו, גם כי אלך בגיא צל מוות, לא ירא כי אתה עמדי. שבטך משענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי, דשנת בשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He has me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He guides me on path of righteousness. He revives my soul for the sake of his glory. Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod do comfort me. You set a table inside of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall abide in the house of the Lord forever. It is now my honor to call upon family members to speak. We'll begin with the grandchildren, with Amy, Evan, Brian, and Max.
Microphone or no?
I think this is the microphone.
Okay.
Is this the microphone? Yeah, just start talking.
Okay. Hi. Just to start us off with a grandchild perspective about Grandpa. Grandpa was a really fun guy to hang out with, and not just 20 years ago or 10 years ago or 5 years ago. Grandpa was a really fun guy to hang out with, as of 2 weeks ago. And oftentimes I'd be in town and I'd give Grandpa a call and, try to schedule a time to see him, and he'd start mapping out the whole day. He'd say, great, come over, we'll go to Charbroil, we'll hit some golf balls at Big Oak, we'll chip and putt for a little bit, we'll go get some peaches at Gentles, we'll come watch, sports in the den, and, he just really loved hanging out with his grandkids, and we loved hanging out with him too. I played tennis with Grandpa in his doubles league, and this was when I was in high school, so Grandpa was well into his 80s at this point. And he was very competitive, and I'd hit a ball that was on his side of the court, and I'd miss, and he'd let me hear it in the changeovers. And Grandpa, if you were he loved sports, he loved watching us play sports. If you were a parent coach or a umpire, you better be on your A game, or Grandpa would let you know about it. I'd oftentimes, call Grandpa, and I'd prank phone call him and pretend to sell him a reverse mortgage or be like a pizza delivery guy, and he would just, give it right back to me, and we'd have a playful relationship. I oftentimes, wish that someone who didn't know Grandpa was listening on the phone call, so I could say, how old do you think this guy is? And they'd guess an age much younger than Grandpa, of course. with Grandpa's passing, him being 97, should be a celebration of his life, and it is. And Uncle Scott and people will speak on his amazing life. But I do feel that a little bit like I'm missing out on hanging out with a great friend.
Yeah. He had such a fun, larger-than-life presence. Kind of what Evan was saying, I would be really proud the few times my friends would kind of overlap with him and think that they marveled that someone at 91, 94, 97 could keep up with your sarcasm, dish it back. And it's strange that somebody dying at 97 would be shocking, but he had a zeal for life that sort of tricked you into thinking he'd outlive you. And after Grandma died, a few things changed with Grandpa. One that really comes to mind is the first time visiting his home after the funeral. He opened the door and proudly stuck out his hand, and it was just red and swollen, and he said, "I burned myself cooking." And I was like, "Oh no." He's like, "No, it's okay, I coated it with butter." And that was just spoken like a man who had never used an oven and had women in his life and had a poor understanding of what butter does to heat retention. But the other thing that kind of came to mind after Grandma died, a change in Grandpa, is at the end of our conversations where we would joke, sarcasm, give life updates, complain about the Buffalo Bills, he started saying, "I love you." And I thought capping our conversations with this clear phrase, it just felt really nice. And I think it showed that the loss of Grandma had made him want to highlight his appreciation for us and for his life and for the world. And it made me feel really lucky.
I cry more than them, so. Papa had 3 loving older sisters, a doting mother, and the natural charisma, charm, and confidence of a Jewish boy who grew up with effectively 4 mothers. He had, by all accounts, a charmed childhood. He liked to talk about his mother, Dora. He would call her Ma, and he would always say when he talked about her, "My mother, Avishom." I never met her, but he brought her up all the time, so it feels right to talk about her now when he can't. I think he would like her being mentioned. He once said, and he said this to my friend Gwen, who interviewed him for a writing project that she did. I'm pointing to Gwen's mother, anyway. He said that Dora once told him, that he said about Dora that she could take the little good in you or anybody and magnify it to get rid of all the bad. Papa did exactly that with everything. He did it without trying. His natural disposition was to always spin what was happening in the way that had the most potential, and this made for a fantastic grandfather. For us, his grandchildren, he made the world magical. When I was a young child, and I know this is true because I recently found a journal entry about it, I would have ideas that I could cure diseases. I'd make a plan to run experiments, and it almost always, for some reason, necessitated a trip to a hardware store because I was young and I didn't know how science worked. None of these experiments made absolutely any sense. None of them had any potential. They weren't based on anything, but he would take me to the hardware store. He took our ideas, our interests really seriously, even when it came to things that were patently ridiculous, like trying to cure cancer with a hammer and nails. He had a great way of greeting you. He always warmly clasped your hands. He liked to ask Vivian, his great-granddaughter, how much she loved him, and he bragged to his friends when she said, "This much." He loved riding her around in a basket on his tricycle. When she was a baby, we did a photo share website with her where we uploaded pictures of her and people would comment, and he would comment hilariously, effusively on almost every picture, and he would sign the comments, "Love Elterzady," which is what he wanted to be called. It doesn't roll off the tongue for a child, but he loved that. And I feel bad, we don't do the picture posting for my son, and it's largely because he kind of stopped commenting and it wasn't that much fun without his comments. He loved to show Vivian pictures of my grandmother to make sure that she knew what she looked like. Papa had a lot of stories. We all know them. I'm sure you're gonna hear a bunch of them today and at the Shivas. He told them again and again, but my favorite is how he met our grandmother. Probably everyone in this room has heard it, but I think it's so foundational I wanted to tell it in this context. And again, my friend Gwen talked to my grandpa about a year ago and interviewed him, and he shared the story with her. And then she transcribed it for me. And so I have a little transcript of how he told it about a year ago. He said, my friend Al Pollock, Navy veteran, high school friend of mine, I was giving him a driving lesson. That's how I met Virginia. We're driving on Clinton Avenue, coming to Main Street, headed south. Sibley's was there, and the light is amber. There's two girls standing there, 19-year-old Judy Posner and her 16-year-old sister. I don't know her name, but I didn't know her name. He learned her name. But I looked in the rearview mirror and thought, oh boy, I was smitten. She was ethereal to me. So months later, Pinky Cohen and his future wife Gloria were going out on a date to a new Italian restaurant. He called me and asked a double date. I'm a macho guy, so I said sure. And then I thought, I better get on this. I don't want to have to call back and say I didn't get a date. I knew Judy through Al, so I called her house and her sister answered, who I remembered from the car ride. I asked, is your sister Judy busy on Wednesday? She said, I don't know. And I said, well, are you doing anything? She said no. I said, look, talk to your sister Judy. I told her where I'm going and who I'm going with so she'd feel comfortable. And I said, I'll be at the house at 7. Whichever of you wants to come with me, come out. Because that'll just work out. I go to the house and Virginia's there. I was hoping it would be her before I got to the door. I kept thinking about that rearview mirror. So that started it. We got married in 1951. They lived in Brighton. I still lived on Strong Street, same house. I always kidded Al because of you and that goddamn amber light. He would also tell a story about being at the Navy, in the Navy. He was on a landing ship tank, and he had to do night patrol sometimes and look out for the enemy. And he'd go all the way up into this bird's nest, and he'd watch the horizon for enemy ships. And he told the story in so much detail, I don't have it. He knew still, like to this day, till recently, he knew the name of like the superior command he was reporting to. He knew how many cups of coffee he had had that night, because he had started drinking coffee in the Navy sometimes. And he was up in the bird's nest and scanning the horizon, and he sees orange on the horizon, he sees yellow, and he thinks, oh my gosh, it's a fire, like something's happening, this is so exciting, I have to tell the superior command. He runs downstairs, he gets the guy, he tells him, they come out on the ship, and the superior command says, Irv, that's the sunrise. I often think Papa had an insanely lucky life, and he did. He met his wife by accident at a streetlight, he survived World War II, he had a wonderful family, and he was successful in business, and he grew up during the Depression without wanting for anything. But I think a lot of it is what you see as a constant in all of the stories we've touched on, and the stories you'll hear from others today and at the Shiva. It goes back to what he said he learned from his mother, that you can take the little good in you or anybody and magnify it to obliterate all the bad. So his relentless positivity and enthusiasm for life made a lot of that luck that he experienced and that he shared with us. For Papa, each sunrise wasn't just a mundane occurrence. It was something more exciting, more adventurous, more memorable. Maybe it would be a fire, and the fire would mean an adventure, and the fire could turn into a really good story.
It is my honor now to call upon Sydney and Danielle to speak.
Hi, I'm Danielle.
I'm Sydney.
There are bets going in the front row right now to see how long I can keep it together before Sydney has to step in. At Grandpa's 90th birthday celebration, he reviewed his life as a book, and his book covers a lot of ground. He said he felt that the past had been good to him, and that was for one significant reason: family. So his relentless positivity and enthusiasm for life made a lot of that luck that he experienced. And that he shared with us. For Papa, each sunrise wasn't just a mundane occurrence. It was something more exciting, and I think a lot of it is what you see as a constant in all of the stories we've touched on, and the stories you'll hear from others today and at the Shiva. It goes back to what he said he learned from his mother, that you can take the little good in you or anybody and magnify it to obliterate all the bad. So his relentless positivity and enthusiasm for life made a lot of that luck that he experienced and that he shared with us. For Papa, each sunrise wasn't just a mundane occurrence. It was something more exciting, and I think a lot of it is what you see as a constant in all of the stories we've touched on, and the stories you'll hear from others today and at the Shiva. It goes back to what he said he learned from his mother, that you can take the little good in you or anybody and magnify it to obliterate all the bad. The two greatest lessons Grandpa taught each of us was family is always most important and to dream the impossible dream. Grandpa has grandchildren coast to coast and currently internationally too. As we all searched for and pursued our dreams, phone calls and FaceTimes with Grandpa became an important part of our routine. Grandpa would end every call the way his mother, blessed memory, always did. To whichever grandchild he was talking to, for example, he would say, "Sydney, you made my day." We all have other family and friends here in Rochester, but it was Grandpa who took precedence when we came to town. We grew up having Grandma and Grandpa at every holiday, birthday, school event, and sporting event. I can't remember a time when they weren't there with big smiles and a whole lot of pride. It was a funny thing at the sporting events. As we got older, Grandpa somehow got louder and louder. His list of comments for us after the games got longer and longer too. We wouldn't trade those big hand gestures and loud comments like, "Why do you keep passing the ball? Square up and drive to the basket yourself," for anything. We were talking to Julia yesterday, who is currently in Guatemala and could not be here with us. We all said it feels like it wasn't Grandpa's time. 97 years, but it felt like we had an eternity. That was the essence of Grandpa. He was so full of life and stories, whether it was a story of the past or a story of the present. Through tear-filled eyes, Grandpa told that story with zest, love, and pride. Many of you in this room have heard Grandpa's stories and just heard a few wonderful ones, and it's a safe bet one was about his family. An example of this is the story of the first phone call Grandpa ever received. He was going to a Red Wings game with his friends. They were all out on the front porch and the phone rang. His mom said, "Irving, it's for you." Grandpa said he'd never had a phone call in his whole life. He said, "Who is it?" She said, "Pa." He ran right over, and when his father asked what he was doing, he didn't say he was going to the Red Wings game. He said, "Why? What's going on?" His father said, "I need some help." Grandpa said he would never forget hearing those words from his father, and that was all he needed to hear. His father needed help with inventory. He told Grandpa to get a nickel from Ma, get on the trolley, there used to be a trolley in Rochester, get a transfer, and come to the garage. Grandpa said he never forgot that moment and never regretted missing that baseball game. Being there for your family was the most important thing, and Grandpa showed immeasurable loyalty. The other stories you may have heard were about Grandpa's time served in the Navy. He was a proud veteran of World War II, as you heard. He was drafted and was making his goodbye calls. He called his sister Sylvia, who he would say pridefully was serving in the Marines, and outranked him. She said, "Irving, do you want to know where you're going? Call me tomorrow at 10 a.m. and get me your FPO number." So he calls back the following day at 10 a.m. and says 3194. Whether that was the right number or not, I don't know, but the way Grandpa told the story, it rolled right off the tongue. Sylvia says, "Now you didn't hear this from me, and forget about this once we hang up the phone, but you're going to the Philippines." Grandpa said he boarded the USS MB Stewart with 2,000 men aboard. We asked him what he felt pulling away, and he said it was the most eerie feeling he had ever had. "I felt like I was drifting away from the world, and family is what kept me going." Years after returning home, and many grandchildren later, breakfast at the Charbroil was tradition. When Grandpa would start storytelling, I would turn the recorder on my phone to save some of our conversations. I was listening to those yesterday, and he said something that I hope we all remember. Grandpa said, "I hope my children and my grandchildren have it as good as I did. I wish for them love, hard work, and probably the most important decision, picking your partner, like I did with Virginia. Whatever you do, Grandma and I will support. I mean, it needs to be legal." He said Grandma and I would talk late into the night about how beautiful our lives ended up, from the sons to the grandkids. The bottom line, Virginia is, we have done something right. I know I can speak for all of us when I say we feel immense pride for having Irv Gordon as our grandpa. Grandpa, we will all continue the quest to follow the unreachable star and share stories old and new, all our love. And first, I would like to say, Danielle, I'm so proud of you. That was impressive. Thank you.
And I'm going to read something that Julia sent from Guatemala that she wanted read today. Grandpa allowed himself to feel and know love. Every time I looked into his eyes, I witnessed a joyful glow with the brightness of the blue sky. He saw the world in wonder and awe, with lightness in his heart and humor in his belly. He had pain and struggled through heartache, but one could rarely tell because his mind was so strong, so resilient, and so set on love. He believed in this life, in the good of the world. His prayer for us has been and will always be to follow our hearts and do what makes us happy. To not wake up one day and feel we wasted our days away, but to have faith that in doing what we love, all else will fall into place. Blessed memory. Grandpa recognized the reality of our world, the laziness, the unjust system, the disconnect through technology. Being with him was like stepping back in time to a day when cell phones didn't rule our world, but faith and perseverance moved us forward and lit the way. He motivated me to continuously evolve, challenge myself, and look people in the eyes, because this is the base of our connections, giving us memories and stories to tell. I thank the many stories. Thank you to my dad for showing up and taking care of our family without question. This is the greatest gift you could give to Grandpa. Family meant the world to him and forever will. I adore you, Grandpa, and I pray for the love that you've shared with us to continue to warm our hearts and to bring a smile to our faces every day. Grandpa Irv, blessed memory, you've made my day.
Thank you, Sydney and Danielle. We now call upon Irving's children, Kenny, Mark, and Scott.
When I received that call on Tuesday from Scott with what for me was terrible news that my father had passed away, and you know, at 97, he lived a full life. It was still terrible. Whether it was another day or another week, we still wanted more from the man. I texted friends and family to let them know, my friends and my partners at work in particular, let them know what was going on. I'd be taking a leave of absence. One response from my partner at work, and I've been there with him about 20 years, was very nice, and he said, your father was a man, I'm very sorry for your loss, your father was a man of integrity and convictions. He'd never met my father. And he said further on, I could tell from the way you spoke about him over the past 20 years. I didn't even remember speaking about my dad to this person. But he could tell the way, we approached Dad, the way we felt about Dad, and he truly was a man of integrity and convictions. Dad had a very large presence in our lives. I don't recall him ever asking anything from us. He was always asking how we're doing, and this was true until the end. I really wish we had even more time with him. My dad rarely complained about anything. He kept everything to himself. Over the past year, I can tell you, I got much closer with my dad. He was having more physical problems. I would regularly call him on Bluetooth going into work in the morning or coming home. Sometimes he would call me back. It was usually a pocket dial. But he'd get back to me, and I'd act like I was expecting it. I love those conversations. I'm gonna miss them. You know, again, we'd talk, most of the time it would be about sports, you know, sometimes about politics, but I'd keep that to a minimum because I wanted to get to work. And, you know, we're gonna, you know, what I feel like, I feel a real void, a real loss. And I know, you know, tomorrow morning or the next day when I go into work and I get on my Bluetooth and it's generally speaking with clients, speaking with friends, I'm going to miss that call to my dad. You know, I like how everyone got into Dad's history and all the stories. So I really don't have much to add to that. Some impressions about my father growing up. I just remember driving to New York through the Catskills, and he felt like such a confident driver, probably to a fault, because when he was in his 90s, he kept driving the same way, and it didn't change. And, you know, we got to the point where, you know, we're a little worried. Another thing, I don't know if you heard this story. It's not really a story, but my dad was a catcher in borderline semi-pro baseball on the north side of Rochester, where he grew up, Strong Street. And I said to Dad, you know, you're not built like a catcher. And he wasn't, you know, tall, skinny. I said, Dad, what'd you do? He said, and he told me it was difficult for him because these big burly guys would come down third base and try to knock him over and knock the ball loose. And Dad said, you know, and he, like I said, was a man of convictions. He said, I did whatever I could to hold on to the ball. And I pictured him flying through the air, holding on to the ball, tagging that man out. And that was my dad. I'm going to miss him terribly. Zichrono livracha.
Dad gave us all constant encouragement and fostered our confidence throughout life. He was granted a generous portion of life, and we are lucky to have his blessed memory. And apart from the script, I'm pretty amazed that in the past 3 years he started learning Spanish. He knew 4 words. And we kept in touch more this last year. We'll all miss him.
And I'd just like to say one more thing. It's just for me very fitting to be here, back in Temple Bethel. This was a place Dad loved. I was bar mitzvahed right here, and I've been away for a while. And it's nice. This is really the perfect place to talk about my dad's life.
Hello, I'm Scott, his youngest. Just give me a second. You know, I was bar mitzvahed here. We got married here, and not to bring up my brother, but I wish the 4 of us were standing here. You'd realize, how are these 4 related? None of us look the same. We're all, well, as time goes on, we're all looking the same. But when we were younger, you didn't know. I was up here, 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 and here. But I miss my brother dearly. And this is a celebration of my father. So take 2 seconds, think of a memory of, if you knew my dad, whatever it is. It could be insignificant, it could be, I have 1 million of them. So I'm going to share one, then I'm going to talk briefly because everyone wants to get rolling. My memory, February 7th. Holy God, I got the wrong glasses on. That's fantastic. Oh my God. I'm like, this is going to be really tough. February 7th, 2024. I'd taken Dad to a basketball game, which I was officiating at Gates Chili. Dad was not very mobile at the time at all. You can kind of see what was going on, and he struggled to get him in the car, out of the car. He was at the game, and then we left, and we usually go out to dinner, and I was like, oh man, I can't do that. It's just too much. So we decided, I said, let's go through the drive-thru. Went to his favorite restaurant, Bill Gray's. He's got his chicken fingers next to me, fries, soda. I'm eating a burger. We're driving down the highway. And I just looked at him, and I said, how cool is this? You know, a 97-year-old guy. It's like when I was in high school. That's what we did. We drove around and talked about nothing. But that's what Dad and I did. That's an insignificant story, but I'll never forget it because I know it was really, really, really special. So, all right, let me get rolling here. Special thank you to Rabbi Bitron and especially Debbie Zager, who is a family friend, and she kind of runs this joint. And she always said to me, and Rabbi, how's Dad doing? All the time. And so it was genuine. It was not a business conversation. It was genuine. So I want to thank everyone for coming here today and everyone who's streaming the service. I think that's a neat thing because people are traveling everywhere. A lot of people reached out. The messages, our family, thanks everybody. It was so warm. A ton of texts, stories about Dad. This is not here, but I found it amazing. We always would talk about his crew, and there was 25 of them golfers, and then there was 4, and now there's 3. And I see him come in today, and boy, that hit me. Keep it going. You're special to everybody, special to my dad, and special to me. This would be a little repetitive because I'm the last speaker. Dad was born July 4th, 1926. He grew up at Strong Street off of St. Paul. 3 sisters, you heard, Jen, Sylvia, Blanche. Graduated from Franklin. I roughed the game at Franklin about a month ago. Has not changed. They haven't put a dime into that place. So I really felt how Dad was at Franklin. I mean, it was eerie. It was very eerie. He served in World War II in the Pacific from 44 to 46. So many of the veterans, he would tell me, came home before he did. And you had the GI Bill and you got to go to college. So he was like, man, all the good schools are taken up. He's like, where do I go? Syracuse was gone. And so he had a friend who had a cousin who knew a guy that was Jewish and he was in a fraternity in the Harvard of the Midwest, Ohio Northern University, which I didn't find out till like a year ago that he went there. I had no idea. After coming home from break, he met my mom, basically chased her around to Ohio University, Syracuse, and finally to Rochester, where they got married, and you've heard all that. So I'm going to continue with couple of stories. The military was a very interesting thing. Most of his life, he never talked about it. But as he got older, Mom passed, he really was focused on the military and his service. And there's 2 significant things. First, the VA on Calkins. I was driving by one day, and I was like, what is that new building? And I was VA. And I'm like, okay. I drove in, and I said, hey, what do you guys do? And they said, hey, I said, I think my dad's a veteran. He goes, does he have his discharge papers? I'm like, he's 97. This is recent. I go, I doubt it. Hey, Dad. He goes, yeah, they're right here. So next thing I know, he was in the condo still. He's got a ramp. This is within 2 weeks. A ramp, a walker, a scooter, you name it. I'm a huge fan of the VA. I had no idea. If you have any veterans, their arms are wide open. I mean, wide open. So another thing is when we would go there, because they have medical services for everything. he was like a celebrity because he was a World War II veteran. But there's other veterans there, you know, some in tough shape, some not, some younger, and they would shake his hand, thank you so much, because not only was he a celebrity, and the reason was he was a 1%er. There was 16 million veterans who started in the war. There are 114,000 left. And Dad and I would talk about that, and you know, the number's going down. So that puts it in perspective. So if you ever see a veteran of that age, realize where they're sitting in the equation. But the VA has been terrific. Dad's legacy was to do whatever was asked from his family. He never asked anything, he just did it. He was kind of like, hey, Dad, and he would be in the car. You know, you didn't have to finish the sentence. He was just, he's looking to help all the time. Dad loved to hold court. What I mean by that, the weddings, the funerals, the bar mitzvahs, any social event, I'd look over and Dad be like, all my friends would be around him or a group of people, and he wasn't loud, he would just talk, but he was engaging and he was a great listener, and he would follow up with questions about it because he really cared, which was special to me, and I would sit there very proud, like, that's my old man, you know, with my friends or whatever it was. It was just, I'm sure if you've been around, you felt it, you have seen it. I remember Mom and Dad at every event dancing around the, you know, whatever, bar mitzvah, weddings, and they were dancing like no one else was in the room. I mean, they didn't care, and they were terrific, and just kind of showed all that love that they had for all those years. When my brother Steve got sick, my dad and Steve, you know, we would go to all my games that I would referee. Just kind of a Dad and I and Steve were like, hey, what a cool way to bond. We'd go eat. Obviously, I carried that on with Dad. I was in Gates Child and this was a month and a half ago, and I knew it was getting tougher because I would get him in a wheelchair and I put him right in the middle of center court in front row. And like, you know, I would run harder because it's my old man. I mean, he's watching his son, and I would run, and then about third quarter, I'd look over, he'd be fast asleep. And I'm like, I'd run past, like, hey, Dad, you know, because it's not a good look for a 97-year-old guy sleeping in the middle of the court. But that's just, you know, these are just random thoughts here. Dad was a very good golfer to Midvale, Rondequoit. We were all members. Let me put it in perspective. He did not pass that down to his sons at all. Mark, probably a 42 handicap. I would say a good handicap is in the teens, and the higher you are, the worse you are. Mark, probably a 42. Actually, I believe you probably never have played 18 holes in your life. Kenny, he's got to be about a 38. Maybe one or two full rounds in your entire life, if I'm guessing. Yeah, right. Steve, about a 34 handicap. There was a slight glimmer because he would golf with Dad, that there was a golfer in there. Myself, I'm about like a 34. I haven't golfed in 15 to 20 years. I'm good for a hole or two, then my mind's gone. Dad was not the most tech savvy. I remember taking him to Chen Garden a few years back, and he told me he's expecting a phone call. I go, okay. He brought a phone. Okay, great. He didn't own a cell phone. So I'm like, what are you talking about? He pulls out the cordless phone from the house out of his pocket. I go, and I swear I would never tell that story, but I think it's okay now. But what an unbelievable, I mean, you can't help it. I mean, that's just, he was not tech savvy. He didn't, you know. It's all good. It's all good. So over the last 3 or 4 years, because of circumstances, and everyone helped that was local, and when they came in, my brother's on the phone, whatever, so I'm taking zero credit. I was just here, and I won, because I got to spend every day, every minute with Dad. You know, I got very lucky, you know, and when you guys came in, you got lucky. But this was never, people are like, oh my God, I'm like, whew. I go, no, I'm good. I was thrilled. One thing about the last 6 months, I'm winding up, by the way. The last 6 months, Dad moved out of the condo and into Wilk Manor for assisted living. First day, I sat him at dinner. So when you're at assisted living, they put you at a table. You don't move. You've got your crew. Him and 4 women. There was him and 4 women, and he was like, no problem. That was his crew. I was there yesterday, day before, and they all came. Come here. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so. Just what a terrific place. They love my dad because he was with it, you know. And the electronic wheelchair he got from the VA, he was just, this thing was like a Cadillac. He was just, you see him kind of zipping through, you know. They like, slow it down, Irv, slow it down. 97 years. My brothers and I were so fortunate to have seen every season of a father and son relationship. We had him as a caregiver. We had him as our dad. We had him as our father. We had him as a friend. We had him as a cheerleader. We had him as an equal. We had him as a person in need. We had him for 97 years. Still our biggest fan, still our cheerleader, still our dad. In closing, I want to thank everyone who's ever met my dad. He was just a big fan of everybody. So thank you. One more story. If you don't mind, my dad was an average singer at best. At best. But he had this tradition. He got in front of everyone. He got in front of everyone at big events. And, you know, his song was The Impossible Dream. Our wedding, whatever. I think the last time Dad sang that song was at Amy and Mike's wedding, if I had to. I'm not sure. Could have been, or it was one of the weddings. He must have been like 90 or something. I was like, oh man, this is not going to be good. You know, I'm thinking, you know, he was like, because he didn't, like they said, he didn't care. He was like, I got this. He got up there, and I remember going, oh. Then I don't know how it happened, but 2 women who he knew or worked with came as backup singers. And he absolutely crushed it. And I was like, there's my guy. It was awesome. It was awesome. So I think it's appropriate to honor my dad, to ask my daughter Sydney's girlfriend, Isa Antonetti, to come up and sing The Impossible Dream. Thank you. Let me get my gear out of here. I got a lot going on.
You got all your glasses. Hi, everyone. Bear with me. To dream the impossible dream, to find the unbeatable flow, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go, to right the unrightable wrong, to love pure and chaste from afar, to try when your arms are too weary, to reach the unreachable star. This that one man, scorned and covered with scars, still strove with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable star, to reach the unreachable star.
Thank you so much. The man of La Mancha at the end of the 70s, Peter O'Toole. Now I understand why Irving was interested in learning some Spanish, because his next project was to read Don Quixote of La Mancha. So when we confront death of a beloved one like Irving is to all of us, we become conscious of the passing of time. In our sources of the Psalms of old, we read, Limnat Yemeinu Ken Hoda, Venavi Levav Chochmah. Teach us to number our days, that we may get a heart of wisdom. And yet, how can we number our days wisely? Is a simple total of days we spend in the world significant? Is your life significant? Well, for some people who live into the 90s, the passing of time is just that. And the only thing we are going to know about them is there will be a death notice in a newspaper somewhere that marks the fact that they have lived. In our tradition, life is not the simple counting of days, because significance lies in the use we make of those days, in the experience of life and what life has to offer, both in sorrows and joys, in frustrations and accomplishments. And therefore, to become deeply involved in the lives of others, to give freely of one's love and affection, to feel loved, to feel appreciated, that is to live wisely. And then, when one's hour has come, one has left behind a legacy of memories to be treasured by children and grandchildren and friends, and to be honored at every occasion when we gather. I believe that Irving Gordon belonged to the group of people that know how to live life. He got it from his parents who emigrated from Russia and Poland. Parents, Simon and Dora, who met here in Rochester. People that set the example for him and his siblings, as Irving spoke so positively about his own parents. As we heard, he helped at the store, Gordon Motor Parts, from the age of 12. And he spoke proudly about working with his father. He had a great positive impression about his own mother. And he was able to transmit that forward with his own example. He was a man of the Depression who never wanted anything, that got used to hand-me-down things from other siblings, to get his sister's bike, but he never missed anything. He was an integral part of building the Jewish community of Rochester. He was part of the building of the new JCC. He was the head of membership at first and then vice president. Because the Jewish community was very important to him. He appreciated those who work in the Jewish community, people here at the temple. So when he came and said to you, Good Shabbos, and he put his hand, and by then he was bent over so much. But he stood very tall and straight in terms of his values and what his heart was. And the question was not, how is the temple doing? The question to Debbie, to me, and to others was, how is your family? How is your wife? Don't forget to bring flowers to your wife. And he will go into these unsolicited recommendations of how to keep a relationship. Either he knew what was going through myself with my wife, or he had that shared to all of us to make of our relationship a sacred bond. It is God who makes the decisions how long we live. It is God who makes the final judgment. I gotta see now that Irving should be returning to his parents, to his wife, to his ancestors. The Lord gave, and now the Lord has taken away. Yitzchak ben Shimon Vedora. That was the way he was called when he came to the Torah. That was the way his ketubah wrote. That's the way he knew himself around the Jewish world. Yes, he encountered challenges in life, but he came out triumphant. He brought joy to many of us in many different ways. And we know that his passing leaves a void that would hardly be filled. But he lives in our minds. He lives in our anecdotes. He lives in you. My only wish is that the incredible life he lived will serve as an inspiration to you. Every time you remember him, every time you face a challenge, you will take his inspiration and wisdom and use it to better your life, so you can also count your days wisely. May his memory be for a blessing. Yehi Sichro Baruch. And let us say all together, Amen. Now kindly rise for the Kel Maleh Rachamim, the memorial prayer in memory of Yitzchak ben Shimon Vedora. El Maleh Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Am Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Ashchina, B'malot Kedoshim U'Tehorim, Kezohar Harakia Mazirim, Lenishmat Yitzchak ben Shimon, Shalach Leolamo, Began Eden Teheh Menuchato, Ana Bal Harachamim, Astireho Beseter Kenafecha Leolamim, Utzror B'tzror HaChaim et Nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo, V'nomar